The sex is bad and you're bad at it. No. You're bad at the sex. You're bad at sex. Have you come to the realization yet that you are probably bad at sex? That maybe the lack of sex in your relationship is actually a you problem more than it is a her problem. Last week, we talked about two rather obvious things to look at if the woman you are with has become less sexually interested in having sex with you. And those things were her physical health and libido, as well as her mindset, experiences, and feelings around sex. And yes, those were the obvious ones, but they needed to be said. I've been in session with guys who were really upset with their wives or girlfriends and took her lack of interest in sex very personally, when it come to find out it was just her hormones or something that was easily fixable. So when it comes to these topics, I have to cover the obvious before we get into the less obvious and often darker truths that men don't want to face. So we're going to get into those cold, darker truths today. Once you rule out physical health and libido and that her mental framework around sex isn't unhealthy, then the big thing that needs to be addressed is the quality of the sex that you are having. Now, time for the elephant in the room. If you're watching this and you are a man, the statistical probability is that you are not good in the bedroom. And the consequence of that is your wife choosing her vibrator over you. You don't get very enthusiastic or frequent sex with her. Now, don't get mad at me for telling you the truth. The statistical fact is that 92% of women orgasm by themselves, but only 25% of women orgasm with a man without the assistance of a vibrator or her fingers. So, most women are either not getting off during sex with a man at all, or they're basically getting themselves off while using the man as a prop. This is why, after a while in a relationship, many women would just prefer to not go through the trouble of having sex at all or having sex very often with their husbands. It's funny because with the way our male egos are, it is never something that occurs to a lot of guys that they might be bad at sex. Well, it needs to occur to you, and it needs to be something that you take seriously and look at seriously, because if you aren't creating intense enough experiences for her sexually, then the sex becomes a duty or a chore to her. So no wonder why women often use sex as a trade-off for non-sexual rewards. And it's no wonder why women stop having sex with their husbands once they've won over the commitment and the man's resources. Guys, it's really difficult for you to make the case that she should be banging you every day or even a few times a week when the experiences she is having with you is just not that great for her. And here's the other cold hard truth. If you are not that great at sex, she will most likely never tell you the truth about that. And this is where game and sexual psychology plays a role. You need to be able to create intense enough experiences for her to where she finds herself craving it and wanting it more from you rather than craving her vibrator when she has those horny feelings. Otherwise, she just isn't going to be motivated to want to be with you sexually, and you aren't going to have a relationship worth being in. Now, I will make the disclaimer here that the reason she can't get sexually satisfied with you could be due to things that you don't have any control over. For example, if she was sexually traumatized when she was younger and has emotional barriers, or if she banged 100 people in college and now sex is just dull for her or whatever. Her lack of enthusiasm could be due to something that is not in your control. That said, that isn't going to be the case for most of you, sadly. Okay. The bad news here is that chances are more likely that the sex isn't motivating for her because you just aren't creating a good sexual experience for her on a regular basis, and at least not as good as you could be creating. But the good news is you can get better sexually. And most of that has to do with your game and your emotions that you create in the girl prior to the event, not just the creative manner in which you thrust your ding dong into her. I mean, the act of sex is pretty basic and uneventful when you look at the technique and the mechanics, but the psychology that goes into it, however, can be very complex. And your game can be the difference between her blasting off into an intense orgasm from the moment you enter her, or having to lie to you about having an orgasm and finishing it herself off later after you fall asleep. Now is probably a good time to say, join my community and read my newsletters where I talk about this stuff in greater detail for free, including how to get better at sex, part of the equation. If you are in a relationship right now that is struggling sexually, message me in my community at school and we can talk about solutions for you. The bottom line is you have to improve your sex game if you expect your girl to want to have sex with you. This should be obvious, but we all know how our egos can get in the way of the truth. So when sex is down, we covered looking at her physical and mental health and her libido and her mental framework around sex, and we addressed your sexual skill. That now brings us to the number 4 thing to look at, which is, does she see you as her best choice? This is related to your sexual skill, but brings up some important questions. But first, let's sidetrack. Don't worry, it applies to what we're trying to talk about here. And let's talk about the female orgasm and some ideas from evolutionary biology as to why the female orgasm exists at all, to shed some light on why you being her best choice is really important for her maintaining sexual enthusiasm throughout the relationship. There's an outdated idea that the female orgasm is what is called a spandrel, and that because the female orgasm is not required for contraception and pregnancy, that it must have no evolutionary purpose. Kind of like nipples on a male. Okay. I think the spandrel idea doesn't consider a few really important factors. The main one being that getting pregnant doesn't ensure the survival of the baby. Okay. The mom has to be invested during the pregnancy and afterwards in that child's success, or else that child is not going to survive. A big part of what would ensure maternal investment is the bond she has with dad. The controversial thing here is women kill their babies, okay? That's why the abortion issue is such an issue. And this has been happening for a long time. But her investment into who dad is and the genetic quality of those children is a big thing that will cause her to make sacrifices and keep those kids alive and raise them and sacrifice her resources. So where do you think that bond and that investment comes from? Well, when a girl orgasms with a guy, she gets a flood of bonding neuropeptides like oxytocin and beta endorphins that tell her to bond with this guy. It signals that the dude she is with that makes her come is the best mating choice. And the more intense and frequent those experiences for her, the more intensely she will feel that bonding towards the guy. And the more likely then she's going to invest in taking care of his offspring. So there is definitely an evolutionary benefit to her orgasms, her having an intense sexual experience, and that has to do with bonding to you. Now, how does this apply though to your situation here, right? In 2024, if you give her the most intense sexual experiences, then she will see you as her best and the guy she should invest in. When she has sex with you, part of her feels like she is winning the prize and in having her best choice. So what do you think happens though if the sex is just kind of like all right with you, but her ex-boyfriend Ethan was really the best choice? He was really the one who could, lay her out. If ex-boyfriend Ethan was the best sex she had, well, when she's having sex with you, that just reminds her that she is losing rather than feeling like she is winning. That reminds her that she's settled.
Your woman is pissed the fuck off because you ain't her first choice.
So now you need to answer this question for yourself. Are you the best that she has ever experienced sexually? Are you her best choice? This one is hard to answer because just like how most men aren't delivering good sexual experiences to the women they're with, In general, most guys in relationships are not her first choice. And that is the cold, dark truth about female sexuality that most men do not want to hear. If she is in a relationship with you, but the sex is not as good as it was with a previous guy, then she has effectively settled with you. She has compromised her sexual self for whatever other benefits you provide. Maybe you are a good dad, or maybe you're the nice guy, or maybe you're funny, or maybe you're a good provider. Maybe that ex boyfriend, Ethan, that banged her lights out was toxic as hell, or he discarded her for someone better. And now she feels safe with you and feels like you won't leave her, even though you'll never be as good as that guy, right? Whatever the reason is, if you aren't her best, then she has settled with you. And guys, let me tell you something about the girls. They don't take settling well. Their brains are biologically wired to want to be with the best that they can be with when it comes to mating and sex. If they settle with a guy who isn't their best sexually, and if over months to years they lose hope that he'll ever become that for her, then she stops putting in effort and usually resents the guy for not being better. That is the cold, hard truth. And the problem with this cold, hard truth is that your woman will likely never tell you the truth about this because she might not even be willing to face the truth herself. Okay. So, you could do everything for her and you could be patient while she works on her health and her hormones and her trauma from childhood and her mental framework around sex. And you could improve your sexual skills even, but none of it will matter if she doesn't or can't see you as her best sexual partner. And guys, this is regardless of whose fault it is. The bottom line is if you don't meet this criteria of being her best sexual partner, then you won't have the relationship you want. And the sex will just be reduced to a negotiation with her. So, what is the solution? As always, do the work and become better. That is the solution. Get better at seduction and get better at sex. And if you've done the work and you know that you have sexual skills, then this is a scenario where you do need to exit and simply find a girl who is actually going to be capable of seeing you as her best choice. But determining if you should stay or if you should go or what to do to work on it with her, it's just not an easy thing to figure out on your own. And learning these skills and seduction are not easy to learn on your own either. And since you made it this far in the video, I'm just going to invite you right now to my school community for free, where you can ask questions and get some answers on topics like these and get some support. But with all the information in the world, the reality is if you don't do something with a mentor or a coach or someone to work with you and your girl together, possibly, you will probably lose your relationship. And bad sex will be part of the reason why you lose it. I'm not trying to scare you into anything. I'm just telling you the hard truth and the way things are. So get into school for free, DM me. Let's talk about options for coaching and an action plan so that you can get your sex life to a better place. And whether or not we do something together, this video has provided you with a lot of great information for free. So you know what to do with that. Please like, share, subscribe.